Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Enhance Your World show. I am your host, Chris Alda. Unfortunately, Larkin probably won't be joining us today. She was responsible for taking care of her horses last night, and I didn't hear from her till about 10 a.m., and she was just going to bed. So chances are we're not going to be joined by her today. But hope she gets some well needed rest. And today is a good episode to talk about that. Why do we as humans and humanity create chaos while nature creates order? And it's interesting. We talk a lot about walking in right relation and um, being on the right side of the tracks, or those types of things. And from my teachers of the ancient traditions, um, remind me that back back then we didn't have um, terms of good or bad, or um, right or wrong. It was more in order or in chaos, or out of order, or in disorder. And natural laws that we can observe throughout the cosmos and our planet and humanity and business and everything that reflects itself in the consciousness holds true, these universal natural laws. Now, the laws can be named many different things, as we've talked many times about um, labels and words and symbols and things like that, pointing towards truth, but they can only be truth when we apply meaning behind them, when we apply energy behind them, when we apply action behind them. So, a thought is a energetic signal that gets sent out, and it happens super fast. And because of that fast nature, unless we maintain a certain frequency of thought, such as a belief, um, then that creates the structure within the belief. So, what we would see is chaos then is things that are out of order from what we believe to be true. This once was true, now it's not true. The dichotomy there, the contrast there, is order or chaos, depending on our ability or our responsibilities um, to accept, to move forward, to um, receiving gratitude. A lot of people talk about gratitude, and it's usually about things that they enjoy or they like. But being grateful for things that are challenging has been, in my experience, a great test of true gratefulness, of receivership, of I helped create these results, these circumstances, because I participated or I chose not to participate in a certain way. And now these circumstances, this relationship within myself, within other people, within how I interact with the planet, are being affected. Now that awareness is great, to know thyself, right? Because only when we become aware can we actually then do something about the direction of it. A client, a friend of mine, was talking the other day about nature. And I said, and he was talking about how, most things in our natural world only look to take care of themselves. And that is a limited perspective, from what we can tell. However, if we can view out, or zoom out, and look at the interconnectedness of everything, everything lives for everything else. The river doesn't live for itself. The tree doesn't live for itself. It does what it does because it participates in its life. But the example that I was going with this is, we got on a talk of my tomato plants and how they've just gone crazy and overgrown, and it's so dense in there that I can't find the fruits, and things aren't getting proper light, and there's bugs in there that I can't see, and so essentially I can't steward or care give to the best of my abilities, um, due to the fact that I allowed nature to take its course, and now it's kind of killing itself off, what it would seem to. But what it is actually doing is coming into right relationship, and it's going to produce the fruits, and as stewards and as guides of of energy and of this cosmos and of this planet, we can influence, we can participate, we can nourish, we can prune, and we can weed, we can you know remove the harmful bugs and things like that are harming our garden. And so a garden is a great relationship to have, and it's definitely one that can teach us without the confusion of free will, of individual perspectives, and individual conditionings and individual comforts. Um, and, this is part of why relationships are so rewarding and so challenging. You know, just using the show as an example, having a co host that has a lot of responsibilities outside of this sometimes proves to be challenging when it comes down to us promoting it and doing the broadcast, because there's other things that take higher precedence or priority than the podcast. It's fine. And that's how it works. I'm grateful that we are taking the time to apply ourselves when we can, to share different perspectives on what it is that we're doing here as a humanity, as individual humans within our relationships, how we identify and how we use words, labels, and symbols to direct ourselves and each other through this infinite expression of consciousness. The thing about having experiences is we know that those types of experiences are possible. However, those experiences can never happen again. I was sharing about patterns in my relationships, and I got married at 18 and was married for 20 years, and there was a lot of love there. We were interdependent. We could do pretty much what we needed to do for ourselves and each other. And it got to a point that as I started walking this path, there was more and more resistance. And in my past, I would over explain, I would share perspectives, I would share the benefits, I would share the whys. I think this is important, and not always from a good grounded place either. A lot of times I had defense and protection, and frustration and fear and scarcity, and all those various different aspects in my life, because in my 20s I was trying to prove myself more than I am today. I've gotten to the place in my life where I don't have to prove the quality of my character anymore to myself. Other people, they're always going to challenge that, because when there's resistance or disharmony or chaos within a relation, doesn't matter what type of relation, it could be father son, uh, daughter mother, um, boyfriend girlfriend, lovers, what business, it doesn't matter. But when there's static or chaos between two polarities, we have to repair, reconcile, and reconnect to harmony. We do this on an individual basis because every individual makes up humanity. But then collectively, there's also an effect. So in a relationship, it's two polarities of people willing to participate in the adventure of a relationship. And how we move, how we walk, how we live, how we do all the things are based on our past conditionings of what we've known has worked for us, while still remaining open for the possibility of growing together as a unit, as a relationship. You know, I was talking to a server the other day about her just getting a new roommate, and she was, we were talking about how interesting it is when we get used to living by ourselves, um, how easy it is for us to get agitated by anything that doesn't fit within that construct. Um, but having a roommate, having community, having a tribe, having an organization, having those types of things, how awesome it is, because there's shared experiences. And as long as everybody is holding up their end of their agreement and their responsibilities and all that, everything's awesome. You know, the story she was saying was, yeah, I got home from work, I went to hop in the shower, and, you know, I got out of the shower and my roommate had cooked us dinner. And, you know, like normally I would either have to go get something out to eat because I didn't feel like eating, or I would eat something real small because I didn't want to going into the effort of making a big meal, just getting home late from work. Da, 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 da. And I've shared those kinds of stories on the podcast myself, um, about that, about how it's so much easier to stay in the order and to pick up after yourself and do those types of things when you're aware that it affects somebody else. When it just affects you, some of us are able to go, that doesn't really matter right now. That's not a priority right now. I feel like going to do this instead. And so we find that order for us to move beyond taking care of the chaos that's already around us. And then eventually we look around in the house or the dishes or whatever it is that we're pretending that we're not paying attention to finally gets to a point to where we have to, and then we just take care of it. It takes less energy to witness that the dishes have to be done and then just go do them than it does to notice that the dishes need to be done, create a narrative and an alibi of why it's okay to not be responsible for taking care of those right now, moving and going and doing something else. And then when you return, they're still there. You still got to do them. So again, it's just the processes in which we choose to move through things, which is our free will. That is what separates us from all of our other animals and living organisms on the planet Earth. From my awareness of science, is that we have the ability to have forethought and afterthought. We're able to reflect upon things. We're able to perceive what was the past, project what could be the future, and navigate where we are in the present moment to get us towards that outcome, that result, that desire, whatever. That's how we move through consciousness. My dad and I, talk a lot about, he likes to remind me how I'm an idealist and he's a realist, which is a good balance, right? It's both realms. And if I'm feeling spunky that day, I'll remind them, just remember, there's nothing in this world that we get to take advantage of or take care of or be a part of that once wasn't just a thought. So the idea comes first, no matter how you try to. Edison wasn't trying to create something else and discovered the light bulb. You know, he was looking to create a light, with electricity, and same thing with the technology and all the other things. So, one of the things that I see a lot of, and I've been a part of in the past, are protest and rebellion against the injustices and things like that. And it feels good to be able to express our energies and our words and see that we belong to humanity because there's people like us that care like us. But the interesting thing was, like, that I've been seeing is, like, people are boycotting the data centers, which I totally agree. We should not be destroying our nature, our planet, for more data centers, for more human stuff. But at the same time, if we're going to continue to use these technologies, which I using, StreamYard right now, I building website, have websites and use AI and all that stuff to stay competitive in the human market, right? And because I do those things, I understand that I'm supporting data centers. I don't understand why, outside of ownership and law and that type of stuff, why our solar panels are going on farmland and usable land, versus using it, putting them on rooftops and buildings and parking lots and things like roadways and things like that. We've already disturbed the nature there. So why don't we take advantage of that, and place the solar panels on that? And there's all the kinds of advantages and things like that could happen from that. However, you're not going to own the land. And that's what corporations, that's what everybody wants to do. They want to control something because that somehow gives them certainty. And that's where chaos happens, is we think we have control over something. Someone was sharing a story with me yesterday and said, yeah, my friend made $5 million in 2 years, and lost it all in 6 months. And he's so stressed out trying to get it all back and trying to figure out, where he went wrong and what. And it could have been absolutely nothing. It was just the way that the chips fell from the market being what it is. And it's a lottery. Because if you truly think that you're getting the information that the broker houses and the elites and those that are in charge of those things, if you think you're getting the same information, you might be slightly delusional. And if you do get the same information, you're going to get it at a time where you're not going to be able to capitalize on it, such as the way, because those who have control only fear loss of control. So they're never going to create an opportunity for you to overcome their influence. If voting worked, we wouldn't be voting for the characters. we would be voting for the people who actually control um, the governments, the cartels, the Rockefellers, the, you know, those names that shall not be named, right? Um, and they're named, but they're pretty far removed from the news of how they influence things and who owns BlackRock and all those kinds of things. Because there's privacy laws. We should really respect people's privacy when it comes to making money. And or the interesting thing I saw today, which this is pretty controversial, so it is what it is. But the fact that there wasn't very many immigrants or uh, non affluential influential people that were on the Jeffrey Epstein list. Who were they? They were the leaders of the government. Came the I don't even can't I don't, doesn't even feel good to call them leaders. They are the puppets of our government. They are the people who are playing those roles, the CEOs, the things like that, the movie stars, the elite, as those of us that want to continue to separate our humanity by our classes and by our possessions and by those types of things. I can tell you by being in the adult industry, people will do what they feel like they can get away with. And that's why I always feared going into the big homes and, the senators' kids and those types of things, because they usually did things that were very harmful to other people, but believed they could get away with it because of who they were. And through the legal systems, it's it's been proven time and time and time again. So I'm not trying to create controversy where there isn't already truth. It's just if there's controversy within you, if there's chaos within you, if you're not in order with the current of what's happening through you, that's where you have work to do. If you're more worried about what other people are doing than how you are participating in life, that's why things feel chaotic and out of control. I can personally tell you, even when you can't pay all your bills, when you have an acceptance of that, it is not chaotic. It's just the way it is. And you move through it in the best way you can. Maybe pick up some extra work, maybe take some side jobs, maybe whatever you got to do. And I know there's so many human beings out there that just bust their ass, work, work, and work and work, and give all their time away to their employer, to their company, to their career, to only feel empty inside because it doesn't fulfill them in the ways. It doesn't speak to their soul because they're just playing a part in a system that they don't belong in or don't believe in. Because I think we all belong to it. I might not make plastic bottles, but sometimes I purchase them. What I do with them is my responsibility. That's how I create order within my life. Feeling agitated or overwhelmed mentally or emotionally, and then trying to be grounded and centered within that time is a difficult task. But if you don't even know that that's where you're at, it's going to be really easy for you or myself to react out of our thoughts and emotionalities to later be met with consequences that we didn't receive, but we received them because that was where we were at that time. We brought them into our lives, we magnetized them. The law of attraction is always working. There is no mystery or marketing or any of that other stuff. It is a mystery of when it happens, because a lot of things have to fall in place for the highest good of all things. And thank goodness the physical world works slower than our thoughts and our feelings. Because I would say most people that are on this podcast, including myself, has wished harm on other people or casted hate or anger or those types of things through our thoughts, and we didn't physically act on them. So it was just a blip in consciousness, and then we moved on, unless we continued that pattern. And then we're going to have resentments and all those things, frustrations and suppressed emotions and things like that. And so sometimes to create order, it looks like chaos. And I think that's where a lot of wisdom teachings talk about surrender. Oh, I'm sorry, guys, I didn't have comments on. Sorry, Mark. And I just noticed all your comments. Sorry, I didn't have that window open and totally spaced out. So I apologize. I just looked over and saw that there was comments. So, hey, Mark. And yeah, we don't control anything really, and we're more of an observer than anything. But at the same time, I guess there is something also to be said, Mark, that if you and I were standing at a river's edge and we wanted to get across the river without getting wet, we could apply our efforts to creating a bridge to do so. And so, yeah, we do control things, but we don't control things. It's a weird paradigm, right? And that's why I say we influence it, because if it causes, if we block off all the river to where the river isn't flowing downstream anymore, then it's going to build up and it's going to overcome the bridge and or the dam, or however you want to look at it, and and then it's going to release itself because it wasn't meant to be. And really what I'm trying to get to in this conversation is conscious participation can be both conscious and unconscious. At first, it's conscious because we're consciously practicing it. It's like driving a car. When we first start driving a car, pay attention to everything we do. I can remember when I first started driving, didn't even like messing with the radio when I was driving, because I drove a 5-speed, and so at the time I smoked a tobacco pipe. That wasn't practical for a 5-speed car, so I switched to cigarettes as a teenager. And various different things. But after a while, after getting used to driving, you just go and you do your thing. You don't think about it anymore. And another experience yesterday, I was talking to somebody who, every time I see her, she's stressed out and looking for her next escape, her next vacation, her next thing, whatever. And we talk about various different things while we're chatting, of course, because that's tend to have deep conversations with people that I talk with. And we were talking about energy healing and Reiki and, these different more feminine polarities of consciousness. And she goes, "Oh man, I used to be into that so much. I don't know what happened." And I said, "You still do it. You're still doing it. You're just not conscious of it right now because it became an automatic habit. Your energy, the way you carry yourself, the way you smile, the way all these different things. These are Reiki in another form, not in a prescriptive healing modality, but in an awareness that care is being given and care is being received." As Mark said, yeah, we build bridges with each other. Absolutely. Just like in that example I just gave of a relationship, there's a giver and a receiver. And at the same time, there hasn't been one session that I've ever given that I also didn't receive. Maybe it wasn't financially, maybe it wasn't life altering, maybe it was a minor experience that I've reflected on from time to time, but those are all gifts. And that's where gratitude helps create order from disorder. I'm grateful for not knowing. I'm grateful for not knowing, because that's when life shows up for you. That's the mystery. That's the magic. That sound coming from silence and then going back into silence. It's the rhythm of nature, of our heartbeat, of our breath, of each step, right? Each conversation, each action and inaction is how we become aware of our energy. Now, when we're identified and attached to people, places, and things, characters, identities, those types of things, it's harder for the magic and the mystery to show up because we want to create meaning right away, and so we can move on. That's part of our human conditioning over the last few hundred years in commerce. That's what they say, that, how can you discern between the ego and intuition? And intuition is more like a suggestion, like, it'd be cool if you did this. Ego's like, you got to do this. This person, blah, 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 blah. And then, intuition can come in behind that and say, but is that true? Is that the highest that it could be? Or is that the best that we can imagine given the circumstances that we've been aware of? You don't know until you know. And then once you know, you have the opportunity to do something different. Not better, not worse, just different. As my friend Mark sits here, I can tell you our friendship has been very different from other ones in my past. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for the people in my life that are just in my life. We get to do stuff together. We don't do stuff together. We talk. We don't talk. Those are in the moments. But when we get together, whew, it's great. Great conversations, belly laughs. Working on our Enhancing Your World gathering together in September, 25th through the 27th. Just, God, how awesome is this life? I want you to think about that. I'm glad, Mark. And think about how awesome the life is and the experience that we have each and every day. Can it be challenging? Yes. Can it be tiring? Yes. It means we did something, or we're doing something, or we're about to do something, and we're resting up because what's coming next is beyond our wildest imaginations. What if we lived from the mystery? What if we lived in the mystery or the chaos of life is always expressing what it is that I need and we need to have so we can grow into more harmonious human beings. So we have the ability to relate. I was talking to someone the other day and I said, yeah, a bunch of my friends were carrying a bunch of resentment, and they finally told me about it, and I was like, why did you carry it that long? And they're like, well, afraid to talk to you about it. And I was like, oh, okay, great. I hope you now know that if there's something that's out of harmony, if there's something out of alignment, if something's bothering you and you don't bring it to someone's awareness, how could you have the expectation that they're going to be able to do anything with it, or do anything about it, rather? And even if they're making an effort to shift an automatic behavior, they're still disrupting neural connections and rewriting them to become a different frequency of their humanness, of their beingness. They're putting effort in. And if we're not rewarded by receiving, it's very easy for us, not getting the validation, not getting the support, not getting nourishment, not being blah, 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 to go, this isn't worth it. I'm going to move to something else. Because we have this ability to do that now in our humanity, where, a few hundred years ago, it wasn't that easy. Yeah, right. Thanks, Mark. Let's put this on this. Sure. So, um, right. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because that's true. You know, if there was an disagreement that happened 400 years ago, we didn't do it, but we are responsible for maintaining it, right? Um, talk about the Constitution. We always want to go back to the Constitution. Our forefathers, blah, 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 blah. They also said, women were possessions, and Native Americans weren't human, and all these other things within those documents. But let's talk about how everyone's created equal. Um, and that's why that idea that everybody is equal has maintained a state and level of consciousness where those other things, oh, those are just cliff notes. Those are just inconvenient details of a time that no longer exists. When the all lives matter issue came out. All life matters. The worm, the bacteria, the mold, the fungi, the trees, the leaves, everything that we experience within our five senses is important to physical life. You wipe out all the coyote, now the smaller animals that were hunted by the coyote grow in numbers until there isn't enough food source for them. And then there'll be disease, there'll be die-offs, there'll be all these different things, because Mother Nature doesn't care about one thing. Its focus is on keeping the balance of the whole, because if the environment collapsed to support life, it would all end. The universe could give a fuck less about what kind of car we drive, what type of house we live in, what type of clothes we wear, how we adorn ourselves in jewelry or tattoos or makeup or any of that other stuff. Care less. That's man-made stuff. And I know there's a lot of people out there talking about this stuff and using it as marketing and as leverage and creating a sense of urgency or a fear of losing out, or any of these other things that we've been able to learn through psychology and exploring human conditioning. And most of us aren't aware of it. So I'll give you a pass. Not that it matters. But it's hilarious to me when someone says, "Where do you want to go to eat?" And the first thing they do is they get on Google reviews and talk about where everybody else says is really good to eat. Didn't even ask what type of food you want. And the fact that we can even ask that, what a privilege and an entitlement that most take for granted, because they've never had to know what it's like to not have that. To live on the streets and ask for kindness from strangers to give you money so you can purchase yourself some food. I've had the experience. Luckily for me, it wasn't life or death. I've had to borrow money. I've had to ask people for a hand up because things didn't work out the way that I intended them to. Things got chaotic. But that's what I needed to have in that moment, in those experiences. So I can be here today doing what I'm doing, sharing what I'm sharing, walking how I'm walking, speaking how I'm speaking, creating what I'm creating, all the things. And I'm no different than anyone else. That was the whole reason that I wanted to do this. The whole reason that I wanted to walk this path and hold space for others and things like that was because I didn't think that I was anything special. I had my own special moments, unique expressions, those types of things. Chose a path, non-traditional path. So I see things and perceive things different than a lot of other people because I don't know what it's like to go to college and be told what to think or who I am because I was always questioning that. That's why I got diagnosed with those fun things growing up because I marched to a song that others couldn't hear. And if I had to define it, I would call it the rhythm of life, the heartbeat of our mother in a lot of traditional ways of expressing it. Yeah, vanity is not reality. And it goes back to the philosophy of Eckhart Tolle, and we use him a lot as an example, but it's good. It gives good. He's a good storyteller. Um, and I remember, I believe it was in the Power of Now, where he said, you cannot improve your life. Life is what you are. You can enhance my term, enhance your circumstances. You can influence your circumstances, but you can't change your life. Life is what you've been given, whether you want to go under the whatever God or science or however you want to try to make sense of consciousness. So you have some directionality. Who am I to make you question that? I don't want to make you tailspin into chaos. Yeah, I do. Just a little bit, because that's that's where we get beyond ourselves. At a ceremony that I was hosting, um, co-hosting, the elder that was actually hosting had made a request that no one take showers in my house because the previous year someone broke my shower. And so she was concerned with, leaving me with another broken shower. So she asked people not to take a shower. And, people would ask me, and I'm like, I don't care if you take a shower. But Mary, or, this elder um, asked not to. And I said, so, I guess you have to choose for yourself. And that was a great example of the masculine and the feminine energy. The masculine being the the possibility, the seed, right? And the feminine being the experience, what you chose, the responsibility for it. And we were talking and that day, or talking throughout that week, because it was brought up a lot. A lot of people were talking about it, and we had an outdoor shower, and everybody was fine. It just wasn't heated, and it wasn't. The kids kept draining the water tubs because they were playing in them, and so like the water wasn't always warm um, by the sunlight. So sometimes it was a little challenging to take a shower because it was cold. Anyway, the point that I was trying to make was we got in a conversation that to intentionally put yourself in discomfort teaches us how to respond when we're uncomfortable. So as we go from air conditioned car to air conditioned house to this, and then all of a sudden we're put out in the nature where there's no air conditioning, no fan, high humidity, high heat, whatever, people are miserable because they haven't practiced through conditioning themselves of just accepting that it is what it is. Make sure you hydrate. Make sure you don't get dehydrated. Find some shade if you can. Take more breaks. Rest more. Don't overwork yourself in harder conditions. These are how we grow wise. This is wisdom. It's applied information. People can tell you what they think. People can tell you what they believe. They can justify their righteous way of being who they are or how they've been to get where they are, because those are the choices that they chose to make. They may not be able to talk about the choices that they chose not to make. Or the effects. Just for an example, walking away from a multi-million-dollar contract because it wasn't in the highest alignment for my health and well-being, as well as my relationship at the time. Because what they were asking me to do I would have had to move and all the different things, and my wife was just not on board. So I passed on it. It wasn't in alignment. Now, people have asked, do you regret it? Right. The choices, we gotta love them, right? Was it worth it? Knowing what I know now? Abso-freaking-lutely. Absolutely. Now, there's no doubt that I would have had a bunch of amazing experiences, and my whole trajectory of how I would have walked would have been different. But knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have been able to not destroy myself with drugs or alcohol. Because that was where I was at that time. And it was encouraged. And it was supported. And as long as you didn't make a mess of things, they preferred it. I literally got in a conversation with the guy as I was getting ready to sign my contract. Like, well, we have parties, man. Are you okay with being around things? I know you're trying to get sober. Yeah, fine to get around it. I just don't want to have to do it. And that was when I saw the look. Like, we can't tell you what to do, but it was put to me in a very nice way that we were expected to perform and to be a certain way in front of the public when we were at these performances, when we were at these outings, when we were at these gatherings. So if I was not participating in that way, it would have been very frowned upon, which means they were asking you to surrender your full freedom, your free will. This was in the adult industry. So it was, you're going to do what we tell you to do, who you're going to do, how we're going to, because you're a performer, and that's what you're signing the contract on. So now that I look back on that, I can say, oh, I did it for the greater good of my relationship, but I also did it for the greater good of my relationship, the one that I had with myself. the one that was being asked to do things that I could do, but it didn't feel good. It didn't feel aligned. It didn't feel peaceful. So therefore, it wasn't in order. And so as we're wrapping up this episode of the Enhance Your World show, I want to ask you a question. Are you grasping for a life that hasn't shown up yet? Or are you participating where you are right now because you've been where you've been and intentionally choosing to participate in a higher way of being in relationship with yourself, with other humans, and this planet? Because when we walk together, when we enhance our own lives, we enhance our collective lives through our relationships. And at the end, we'd love for you to subscribe, sign up to the Enhance Your World show on YouTube and Facebook. Also join us on enhancingyourworld.com. We're getting ready to launch our new ecosystem, which is really exciting. I can't wait to be able to share all this stuff publicly as we are getting ready to do that. And so you can book all your services, coaching, wellness, there on the website. You can also read articles that myself and other enhancers have written and published in our podcasts and our classes and our courses, and all that stuff is all going to be right there on enhancingyourworld.com. Super excited about it. Been 10 plus years in the making, and we're getting closer and closer each and every day. So thank you so much for being you. Thank you for being a part of this time and space we call the now. And may we continue on, my friends, enhancing ourselves in relationship with one another, bringing what is in chaos into harmony, also known as order. Much love and gratitude for everything you are, everything you do, everything you choose to be. Thank you, Mark. And we will see you next week, 2 p.m. on Wednesday. We're going to try this new time, and if we can't get our schedules together, we're going to have to adapt again, because it's about creating order and what works between all of us, right? So much love and gratitude, and we'll see you next week.